everybody. So I wanted to share with you my experiences over the last few weeks where we've had really cold weather while living in a camper. So Oklahoma is nothing compared to like the more northern states. Even, like Iowa, places like that aren't too terribly further north than Oklahoma, there's still a fair amount further north, and they still see a lot more snow and really cold weather than we do. So this is definitely not necessarily indicative of everywhere, but I just kind of wanted to share my experience so far. So we've had several nights where it's been in the teens and like low teens for the high, and several days where we've been below freezing. Today, in fact, we were, I think, 31-ish or something like that. It was below freezing for the high today, and the low for tonight is 14. So definitely gets cold here. But I wanted to share this because there's a lot of things, especially being a Floridian, that I wasn't necessarily prepared for. And there's also things with never living in a camper during the winter before that I wanted to share this with you. So a few things my husband and I have done to help winterize the camper is we have put insulation actually in the windows. I do have a video about basically insulating your camper for less than $100 that I did probably a couple months ago. And it was basically project foam that you use for like making cushions, and cutting it to size and putting it in our windows. And so we did that for our windows to help insulate the windows, because obviously camper windows are not very thick. They're not like the double pane energy efficient windows, so you definitely need to insulate them in some way. We also put insulation around the outside of our camper along the bottom, basically creating a skirting. And this is actually something we just did this week. Last week, technically, I guess. Yeah, last week. And the reason for that is the first time it got really cold, my husband was actually out of town, and we thought we were good. We'd gone through several nights where it'd been in the 20s for lows, and we've been just fine. The furnace in our camper actually isn't working, so we've just been basically doing a space heater, and it's worked. We haven't really had any big issues with it getting too cold in the camper. Well, the one time when my husband was out of town and it got really cold, basically like a night and day like today, I couldn't get the camper the next day above 55 degrees on the inside with two heaters going, and the heaters were actually tripping the breaker. So I basically said to my husband, we got to figure something out. And so luckily we had a friend who had some like the thick panel type insulation in one of their barns, that when they bought the property, it was just in the barn to begin with. And so we bought some from them, and it was actually like 3-inch thick insulation. So underneath our camper is very well insulated right now. And we basically use flashing tape to tape it up to the outside of the camper. And I will say that worked so good. We had a very cold night last night where it was in the teens. We had a high, like I said, of in the low 30s today. And my camper never got below 65 degrees. And that was at night. Like the lowest it got was 65 degrees. And that's when it was the absolute coldest out at night. And then today, throughout the day, we've gone back and forth between 65 and 72 degrees, depending on if I'm cooking or whatnot. So it stayed really warm. So there was a huge difference in putting the insulation underneath the camper, like a massive immediate difference that we could tell. And then also having the insulation in the windows helps out a lot too. Now, I will also add, we do not live in a Four Seasons camper. We live in a regular 2009 Gulf Sport King something. It's a 2009 camper. As you can see behind me, it's not very fancy. It's definitely the old school kind of camper. But it works and it's fine. But that's definitely, if you plan on living anywhere cold and you're not in a Four Seasons camper, you absolutely have to think about ways to insulate it. We didn't think we were going to have to do the insulation under the bottom. That's why I said, Florida naive, used to warm weather all the time kind of person. But it's one of those things, you definitely need the insulation underneath the camper. You need the insulation on the windows. And then also, like I said, for us, we don't have a working furnace currently. So we've been using space heaters, which is fine. But we also have a Buddy propane heater that works off of like the little 1 pound, 2 1 pound propane canisters that you basically would use with like an outdoor camping stove kind of thing. And that thing works amazingly. When it was really cold, the one week when we didn't have insulation under the camper, I put that on. Obviously I have to prop a window open some because you can't have a propane heater going without opening up a window because then you could suffocate. But I had a window slightly open and I actually had to turn it off after just, probably about 20 minutes or so because it was already 80 degrees in the house. So, or in the camper. So the Buddy propane heater is definitely worth having if you're living in a camper. Obviously you have to use it properly and have like a window propped open or something like that. Um, but it's definitely worth using. Now, if you have a working furnace, you may not need it, but it's always good to have a backup because even if you're on the grid, on grid power, you're plugged into electricity, guess what? If it gets really, really cold, the power could go out. And how are you going to stay warm? And I mean, 18 degrees is really cold, just in general. And if you live even further up north, you're going to get even colder at night in the wintertime. So it's really good to have backups. Also, I mean, obviously you can have a generator as well too, but what if you forgot to get gas for your generator or something like that, or your generator's not working? Basically, that's why you have backups for your backups for your backups. Always be prepared. Those are some of the things that we've done living in the camper. We've also decided to put sleeping bags basically as like the bottom layer on our beds. So we have our fitted sheet, then we have a sleeping bag that's completely unfolded, that covers the bed basically, and then we have our regular sheets and everything else. The reason for this is the sleeping bag helps insulate the bed as well too, because I'll be completely honest, even with the insulation around the bottom of the camper, our beds still get pretty cold. And it's one of those things where like no matter how many layers you have on top of you, if underneath you is cold, it's gonna still be cold. And so putting that sleeping bag as a bottom layer really helps insulate the bed. And I will say we have actually a brand new camper bed mattress. And then we also have 3-inch thick memory foam on top of it. So we have a brand new bed, brand new memory foam mattress, and it was still getting cold. Or, I guess the cushion memory foam, whatever, for your bed. It was still getting cold, even with all that. So it's one of those things where, thinking about different ways to stay warm. The kids currently, our youngest daughters anyways, because they sleep in the bunk on the bottom, they have that sleeping bag. And then I actually have sleeping bags for them to sleep in and a bunch of extra blankets and stuff like that. Because again, in case for some reason power goes out, or we don't have enough propane for some reason for the heaters, or something happens, I want the kids to be able to stay warm. Now, we do have friends' houses that even if it's like 2 o'clock in the morning, if something happens, I can call them and say, hey, me and the girls are coming over. And they would happily have us over, and obviously my husband as well. But especially when he's out of town, like there's certain people that we know up here that like basically are kind of on call for us. So that's really nice to have that support system as well too for the times when it does get cold. And if my husband is out of town, then we can go somewhere and warm up. But that's just some stuff we've been doing, you guys. Nothing too terribly drastic. But like I said, there are some things that we really honestly didn't even think of. Again, because we're partially from Florida and partially because we'd never lived in a camper in the wintertime. Even in Florida, we'd never been in a camper in the wintertime. So it's stuff that we're learning and that I wanted to share with you. If you do have any questions, definitely feel free to drop them in the comments below. Or if you do have any suggestions on other ways for us to stay warm, feel free to drop them in the comments below. I'd love to hear them. But I hope you all have a great night or a great day. And sorry, it's nighttime when I'm doing this. But I hope you all have a great day. And please be sure to click that subscribe button and hit the bell for any notifications so you know when I post my next video. Hope you all have a great day. Bye.